Hi there. A book in the category of military aviation today, and it's Typhoon by Wing Commander Mike Sutton. Now, Mike Sutton had a very early interest in flying and attempted to join the RAF as a pilot as a youngster and failed to get in. So he went to university at Southampton and joined the University Air Squadron and gained his flying qualifications mainly on the Bulldog trainer, and used that as a route to get into the Air Force, which he then transitioned to jets and then went on to fly the Jaguar. Now, the Jaguar really was not a very capable aircraft. It was a mixed design, and they tried to make it a jack of all trades. And one of the things that Mike Sutton did was to attend the Red Flag exercises in Nevada, hosted by the United States Air Force. And the RAF had long had a history of attending and doing well. And the Jaguar really was embarrassing. And they were kind of the poor relation while they were flying that particular aircraft. But then the Typhoon, the Eurofighter, was adopted by the RAF, and Mike Sutton was put into the unit to develop the tactics and to really write the book on flying the Typhoon. And he makes a point, he quotes the work of John Boyd, Colonel Boyd, and Colonel Boyd had very strong ideas on what a fighter should be, a fighter jet should be, what it needed to do. And the F-15 and the F-16 were kind of Boyd concept aircraft. Very clean and very fit for a specific task. The Jaguar was the opposite. It was loaded with all sorts of roles, and it didn't do any of them particularly well. The Typhoon was more of a Boyd type concept, and it was a much more capable aircraft. It was designed as an air superiority fighter, single seat, and one of the things about it was extremely agile. It's just, if you look at the pictures with this video, you'll notice that it has stubby, what's called canard foreplanes just under the cockpit, and normally the elevators on an aircraft at the tail, and these provide a high degree of maneuverability for the aircraft. All sorts of other wing geometry factors contribute to this, but one of the main things was the engines. It had enormous power, and the Typhoon can take off and go vertical without the afterburners being used. And with the afterburners, it's a rocket, really is. And I've seen the Typhoon a couple of times at air shows, and it is very impressive. My memory of a very low fly past and then a climb using the afterburners, and it was like the hammers of hell. Terrific aircraft. Another thing has what's called a glass cockpit with head-up display, and it's a pilot-friendly aircraft. Now the Jaguar, by contrast, was ergonomically unfriendly, and it was what you might call user vicious. In a book I've reviewed previously, Empire of the Clouds, there's a lot of quotes from test pilots who, when they were ringing out a new design, kept making suggestions about how the cockpit could be improved, and they were usually rejected. Well, the Jaguar seems to go right into that category, and an example that Mike Sutton talks about is to change the frequency on the radio. While you're flying, it's a a low-level strike aircraft, so you're flying through mountains, terrain following and so on, high speed. And to change channels, you have to locate a knob behind you here and turn it. So one of your hands is occupied, so you're not on the throttle while you're doing that, and you lose vision. So things like that don't really inspire confidence in the design. The only design flaw that he mentions with the Typhoon, which comes into when they started using it operationally, was in the cannon. Apparently there was a debate during the design whether or not to equip the Typhoon with a cannon, and this has been gone on before with the Phantom, etc. That leaving the cannon capability of a fast jet is always a mistake. So the cannon, it's a Mauser cannon, was an afterthought, and it does suffer from stoppages. Anyway, during his initial career on the Typhoon, one of the things he was on the quick reaction alert, and he had to intercept an American Airlines passenger jet that was in board that had given the emergency code for a possible hijack. And Mike Sutton gets in at 6 in his jet and shadows it until it's resolved that it is actually landing safely. So that was one of the things. Then he is given command of number 1 Squadron RAF, which is a very illustrious unit, and it's the oldest squadron in the world, and based up in Lossiemouth at the time. Now, a former squadron leader of number 1 Squadron was a gent called Robin Olds, who was an American who'd come over and fought in the Battle of Britain and notched up, became an ace and notched up quite a few kills in his career. And he stayed on after the war in the RAF and was made squadron leader of number 1 Squadron. And he had a marked influence on that squadron. And he wrote a book, and a lot of the things he says in the book are still doctrine and are quoted in the book Typhoon. So while at Lossiemouth, they get the movement order to go, and there's a vote in Parliament, and they're given a warning order that Britain has decided to fight against ISIS, who were devastating Syria and parts of Iraq and Kurdistan. A truly just war. These were people who needed to be exterminated. And so they base in Cyprus, and to get to the operational area they go over Israel, Jordan, Iraq, and then into Syria with refueling en route. And he describes in detail the missions. They were usually 2-ship missions going in. Later they do a 4-ship, but that was more unusual. And terrific air picture with the refuelers, with other fast jets, with the drones, and really complicated battle space. So one of the missions was to take out an IED factory, which was a large, it's actually 2 buildings, a large complex, and it was essential that it was completely destroyed. There was no part of it left standing, and they did that. And then there was another interesting mission, which was to rupture the oil pipeline, which ISIS was using. They were stealing the oil and selling it on the black market, and this was financing the acquisition of weapons. So, but it was buried deep, and what it needed was two paveway missiles to be delivered, one on top of the other. First one to burrow, and the second one to complete the job. So, you know, precision shooting of the highest order, and the combination of the Typhoon, its avionics, and the skill of the pilot Mike Sutton, they were able to achieve this. So really terrific description of a little known air campaign, really. Concludes the book. After leading number 1 squadron, really his active career flying jets came to an end, and he was going into more administrative tasks. So I'll just wrap up by saying that when he first took the Typhoon out to Red Flag in Nevada, the comment from the Americans was, "At last the RAF is back." They were fully able to take part and impress, really like they did in the old days of the Vulcans. So really good book if you're interested in aviation, and it's bang up to date with very, very recent events, and really enjoyable.